Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome to another instalment of Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and indeed all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming, and technology. I hope you're doing well out there, and I'm just going to kick off this episode with a bit of a preemptive apology, which I think might be in order. I'm not quite sure if this is going to prove to be a problem, and I won't actually find out until I come to edit this. And hey, if it ends up being absolutely terrible, you won't be watching this or listening to it, because there are men. Yes, half-naked, sweaty men behind me. And for the benefit of those of you listening to this on your podcast apps, no, you don't need to rush to YouTube to have a look. They are actually behind the wall, but they are in the process of destroying this building using power tools. The whole building is being completely refitted and renovated. It was warehouse space before. It is now going to be a kind of a mixture of warehouse space and offices. And that work is actually going to extend into these offices that I actually have my studio in at the moment. I did know that a year ago when I moved into this studio, but my landlord is going to be moving me on to a much bigger office in another building on site. Probably in a couple of months' time. But that kind of partly explains the reason why I haven't been releasing any kind of main channel videos. There's been a lot of disruption, a lot of work going on here, and also a lot of stuff kind of going on in my personal life, which thankfully is all kind of coming together and looking very, very positive indeed. And indeed, a big part of that was last weekend, which I talked about last week, and that I promised I would do an update on as part of this week's Ramble. So let's just dive quickly into that. Now, what you are looking at here is a photo that I took of my little stand, my table, or indeed actually kind of a part of my studio backdrop that I disassembled for last Sunday at the Retro Collective tabletop sale down in Gloucestershire. So yeah, the beautiful and very scenic historic Belvedere Mill down in Chalford, which is home to the Retro Collective, the Cave, and Heber, of course, among many, many others. So nice to see that whole crew again, the whole Retro Collective crew. Of course, there's Neil, there's Dan, there's Richard, of course, the 3D printing mastermind, and Holly, among many, many others. Really nice to see Holly again. Haven't seen her in quite a long time, so big shout out to Holly. I know that you're listening on your drive to work. And so I was selling off a bit of a selection of items from my personal collection, some things that you may have seen featured in videos on the channel in the past. And as at the time of recording last Friday morning, I hadn't actually rounded the stuff up and decided what it was I was going to be selling. But I had a very frantic day on Saturday sorting all of that stuff out. So as you can see, a complete Mega ST setup, which went to a very grateful new owner. I am going to post some cables out to you as well, as promised, that I've found when I've been digging around this week. He's working on an Atari ST game and wanted some real hardware to actually test it on. Doesn't own an Atari ST, so he decided to start with the Mega ST, which I will say is an excellent choice, a really nice machine, and one that I must say I was quite reluctant to part with, but knowing that it's gone to such a good home and that it's actually being used for such a noble use rather than sat around in my little museum in the next office certainly softens the blow quite a bit. He also bought the monitor and the external hard drive that I had for sale separately for that, and was very, very pleased indeed. And I can't say that I disagree with that. Everything was priced to sell, very much so, and sell it very rapidly did. We also have an IBM PS2 monitor. Again, that went to a good home, did someone a very good deal on that, so shout out to you if you are listening. Lots of loose Atari 8-bit cassette and cartridge games, loose Atari 2600 cartridges, Famicom games, boxed, which I basically let people name their price on, had all sorts of interesting deals going on with those. A Sinclair QL, all boxed and shiny and original and complete. Early Nintendo consoles, Famicom disk drives, that kind of stuff. A couple of 2600s that you will have seen in videos on my channel. ATs, I sold a pair of ATs to Henry, who was a thoroughly lovely chap and has been very much enjoying getting those up and running. I've seen regular updates on those. A Commodore PET and the tiny PC, the tiny Pentium PC, complete setup. And I will say that was another one that I was quite reluctant to part with, because it is one of my favourite machines in my collection. But ultimately, there's quite a bit of overlap with that and other machines that I own. And I got that fired up, hooked it up to my EcoFlow. Shout out, hashtag not sponsored. And yeah, got Doom running on that, and that's attracted a potential buyer over. Big fan of the channel, and someone who is potentially also listening as well. And yeah, all in all, an excellent sale day. So this was the setup as at opening time. It's 11 a.m. This is how it looked at, what's this, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, although I think it was much reduced quite long before that. So as you can see, we're down to 2 tables, a couple of 2600 cartridges and the Atari business computer. Also a boxed copy of Cubase, which I was selling for half eBay sold prices, and still nobody picked it up. So, hey, that's fine. I will continue to own that. So that's not a huge problem. Also down to a single table at, half an hour after that at 2:30. As you can see, here are the items left. A couple of loose Famicom games, the ABC, and my Orpheus 1 card, which also had a lot of interest, but nobody actually bought that, even though I thought that was incredibly well priced. Didn't get any offers on that either. And finally, down to, this was the state of my stall at the end of the day, at 20 past 4, a box and a sign. So things sold very, very well. They all went to excellent homes. I had some really, really great conversations with all sorts of people in the community. Not just the Retro Collective, of course, but the 100 punters that showed up. A particular shout out, I think, is in order to Lee from the More Fun collection of channels and whatnot. And of course, Thomas, his son, who was very, very pleased to see me. So a big shout out to you, Thomas. It was really, really nice to meet you in person. A thoroughly lovely chap, and he had a brilliant day by the looks of it. So that was great to see. Also, while we are doing shout-outs, I do want to give a big thanks to Ellie, who helped me to run the stall. Genuinely couldn't have done it without you. I know that you're not listening or watching because you don't consume any of my internet nonsense, but it is much appreciated. Maybe a word will get back to you. I don't know. And also to Andy from Hack Build Restore. You may be familiar with his website and his YouTube channel. I always end up hanging around with Andy at these events. And, I think we are pretty much like a kindred spirits, I guess. A very, very cool guy. He's also a software developer, as I am in my day job. So we have a lot of common ground with the YouTube stuff and everything else as well. And yeah, he was a massive, massive help on the day, just lugging stuff around, and also for moral support as well, and kind of helping herd customers and things. So big thank you to you, Andy. And do go and check out his website and his channel. I will link them down below. He's a lot more active than me. He's also a lot smarter than me. He develops a lot of original hardware and stuff. I think I'm going to be working with him on a new Atari ST power supply and some other stuff in the near future. And if you recall, at Kickstart a couple of years ago, he had that purple Amiga that he put together that all of the YouTubers signed, myself included. So, our paths have crossed yet again, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. And that kind of brings me to a much broader note as well, and something I kind of hinted on at the beginning of this ramble as well, which is this community. I've really been missing this community. I've had a lot of disruption in my personal life over the last year and a half. I've relocated, moved the studio, job situations changed, marriage situations changed. I don't know if I've talked about that publicly, but there you go. There's a hint for you. And everything is looking very, very much up over, the past couple of weeks and months. And reconnecting with the retro community in person has really, really reinvigorated me and kind of got me interested in all of this stuff again. So, got to meet Mean Machine Dean in person, someone I've chatted to and supported online for the longest time. Finally got to meet each other in person, so that was great. Thoroughly lovely chap, as you might expect. I would continue and give shout-outs to everyone who was there on the day, but I will inevitably forget somebody. So, it was great to meet you all, and the positivity that I was feeling over the course of the day, and the people asking questions about my channel and my videos and stuff, very, very encouraging. So thank you. Thank you to everyone from the bottom of my heart. It does mean a lot. You will have also spotted this on the desk next to me, I'm sure, if you're watching this on YouTube. But if not, this is an Amstrad PC1640, which is an old XT clone from the 80s. Got a 20 megabyte hard drive, and it is a very interesting machine indeed. I used to own a 1512. If you're familiar with my work, you'll probably know that I ended up completely trashing that, attempting projects and things on it. So to pick up a complete Amstrad PC setup, all fully working and boxed, albeit quite a nice shade of orangey yellow, it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So I did have to spend some of my takings on this. So a big thank you to Mark as well, running at one of the stores next to me, who did me a very good deal on this PC at the end of the day. And it was great chatting to you as well. Someone else I've also met at various events and things. So that was the Retro Collective tabletop sale day last Sunday. Highly, highly recommended. When they announce one in the future, I will talk about it as well, and hopefully you'll get a chance to get in and get tickets to that, because hopefully it won't be my last. Unless I've sold everything that I own before then, because I have very much caught the bug for moving some of this stuff on. Not only to free up the money, but also just to see it go into good homes where it's actually going to get used. Now I've kind of had my use out of it. Anyway, that's enough about me, and that's enough about last weekend. I think it's about time we got on with the stories for this week's Ramble. My first story this week is all about batteries, believe it or not, and this one is highly relevant to the vintage computing community. Trust me, I'm going to explain in a second, but just to elaborate just for a moment, if you've ever worked on an older computer, such as this beautiful Amstrad that I see before me on the desk, you will no doubt be familiar with the use of internal batteries. Although I will say this Amstrad isn't the best example, because the BIOS batteries on this are actually external. They're AA's that go into a little slot underneath the monitor, which is actually a brilliant design decision. Well done, Mr. Sugar, for coming up with that. Or Lord Sugar, Sir Sugar, Baron, King, whatever it is he wants to be known as this week. And to be fair, he probably also didn't personally come up with that idea. It was probably one of his engineers. But anyway, I digress. If you've ever worked on an old computer like this, or indeed something similar, your Amigas and things like that, you'll no doubt be familiar with the use of internal batteries for powering stuff that needs to be constantly powered. Stuff like real-time clocks that keep the time. I mean, it would be quite annoying if you had to set the time on your computer every time you switched it on, which certainly is the case with some older machines. And also things like configuration settings for stuff like BIOSes. Stuff like that originally started off with the IBM 5150 as being implemented in the form of dip switches, but computers rapidly became a lot more complicated, and a lot more of that very low-level config stuff needed to be stored somehow, and the cheapest solution at the time was some kind of battery-backed memory. Anyway, as you will also probably be aware, if you are used to working on these machines, these batteries have a tendency to leak as they age, and the electrolyte inside them can be highly corrosive. It leaks within the PCB layers and can completely and utterly destroy motherboards and things, and can be very, very tricky to try to repair, as many of us have experienced personally. I know I have with a fair few machines over the years. And the biggest offender for all of this, getting to the point of the story, is a company called VARTA, which you have no doubt heard of. Now, whether this reputation is actually deserved, or whether they were just kind of one of the biggest battery manufacturers back in the day and we just happen to see their name everywhere, is kind of a matter for debate. But what isn't up for debate is the news surrounding VARTA that has come out in the past week, because it's not good. Well, depending on your opinions of that company. But anyway, if we head over to Reuters.com, the story here, German battery maker VARTA files insolvency applications. So yes, the company is in big financial trouble. And we'll find out the details of that in this very short article by Reuters. Of course, VARTA, also known outside of the computing world, I think mainly for car batteries. I know I've bought some VARTA car batteries over the years that have actually been very, very good. And perhaps some more kind of industrial stuff. But they do sell consumer batteries as well, AA's and AAA's and things like that. As we can see in this article, this rather nice illustration here of some VARTA batteries. But it seems that they may not be available much longer. So the story reads, Munich, July the 24th. German battery manufacturer VARTA has filed 4 insolvency applications, a spokesperson for the Stuttgart District Court said on Friday, marking another setback for the company. Reuters reported on Thursday that VARTA planned to file for insolvency after its shareholders, sports car manufacturer Porsche AG and Austrian investor Michael Toner declined to provide additional funding to the struggling company. I'm going to go with Toner. I think that's how you pronounce that name. It's a German name. Apologies if it's not quite right. VARTA now faces a potential breakup. Key creditors, including Deutsche Bank, intend to take over the profitable household battery business, while Toner has expressed interest in the micro battery division. VARTA lost its key customer in the spring. Apple plans to source the rechargeable coin power button cells for its AirPods headphones from China in the future. And that's it. That's the end of the story. So, VARTA is trading insolvently, as in it is losing so much money that it can't afford to pay its bills, essentially. And its key shareholders, its key creditors, are refusing to bail it out this time around. So it looks like the company might be split up. One of those owners is this Michael Toner chap who's interested in micro batteries, which will be stuff like AirPods, that kind of thing. And it seems that Porsche have kind of washed their hands of it and aren't interested in the company at all anymore. So that's quite interesting. It says the household battery business is profitable and the micro battery division is profitable as well. So I guess it's the industrial division, probably competition from China. Perhaps that'll get bought up by some kind of Chinese battery company looking to, take ownership of their technology or something. I'm not quite sure. There's not much detail here. But the important thing here for vintage computer enthusiasts is that VARTA, which has long been a pain in many of our sides, rightly or wrongly, is sadly in trouble and perhaps won't be around for much longer. So from one dead and dying brand to another next, or at least I thought that was the case until I saw this name pop up on my Discord server over the past week. And it was very surprising indeed because they have new products coming out. But as far as I was concerned, they were gone. Let's elaborate a little bit. 7 months ago, apparently, according to my notes, I reported on the demise of Arcade 1Up, who, of course, make those replica arcade cabinets that you used to be able to pick up at places like Argos here in the UK or Costco or whatever, these kind of big high-volume retailers. Now, I think they had a bit of a reputation for being perhaps a bit flimsy, perhaps using substandard arcade controls and screens. I don't know if that's actually the case. That's just based on chatter that I saw on the internet at the time. And I think that reputation was perhaps a big kind of contributing factor in the downfall of that company. Not one that I have any personal hands-on experience with at all. So these aren't my opinions. But it seems that around that time, the company was actually bought out and rescued by some new owners who had some quite lofty ambitions. And it seems that this week's news is connected to that. So if you also missed that, let's talk about it. Now, here's a story over on Gizmodo.com, which was reported back in February of this year. And it is talking about a company called Basic Fun, who acquired Arcade 1Up. Now, I hadn't heard of the name Basic Fun, but they own brands like Light Bright, Care Bears, Connects, and something called Lincoln Logs. I have no idea what Lincoln Logs are or is. I can imagine, but I like to think that I'm probably wrong, because that would be disgusting. Is it an American thing? I have no idea. If only I had the world's information at my fingertips somehow and could go and look it up, but I don't. So anyway, that's Basic Fun, and there is an interview here on Gizmodo, which is quite interesting if you missed this at the time. It's with one of the new owners of Arcade 1Up. And just to sum this up very briefly, because this isn't the news for this week, they are making a commitment to quality and kind of building, making the cabs a bit more substantial, a bit better built, and using higher quality hardware in those. And it seems that Basic Fun do already, or did indeed already, manufacture their own arcade licensed toys and things. So it seems they're very well positioned in that market to take over the ownership of the company. So there you go. Somehow I missed that. Anyway, the story that was being talked about this week comes from San Diego Comic-Con, and apparently Arcade 1Up are exhibiting there, and they are showing off all of their new cabinets, and people have got hands-on with them and played with them, and the news coming out of that is very positive. People were reporting some very good things about those, so it all sounds very good. So here's a story on Time Extension, which talks about their new Outrun cabinet. This is officially licensed from Sega, as per their other products. And based on the photos, I have to say this looks rather nice. It's got a nice high quality looking steering wheel, a nice chunky substantial looking thing. It's got it's got the gear shifter, as you would expect from an Outrun cabinet, and the light up buttons and stuff. I have just spotted the incredibly bad Photoshop job on the screen that they've done here. Can you see this if you're watching this on YouTube? Yeah, that's obviously not a photo of the game actually running. But anyway, there are other photos of the cab here as well, and it seems it does have pedals, as you might expect, in addition to the other driving controls I just mentioned. The artwork looks very authentic as far as the original cab is concerned, and also this offers a 19-inch BOE-made LCD screen, and it stands at 67 inches tall. Now, in addition to the original Outrun game, you also get Turbo Outrun and Outrunners, which of course were the official sequels to Outrun. And you also get Power Drift, which I believe I've played. I think I remember that game. And Rad Rally, which I don't think I'd even heard of. So that'd be an interesting one to check out. And this is available exclusively at Costco in the US this fall, or this autumn. I guess in the fall, as it is in the US. $629.99, or for $30 less, you can get a smaller deluxe variant, which has a 17-inch display. It also mentions here that they've announced a Street Fighter II Supreme cab and a Pac-Man table arcade machine. So let's have a look at those while we're here. Over on their official website, this is the Street Fighter II Supreme Series arcade machine. If you've seen the original cab, you will no doubt find this very familiar. It is, again, very authentic to the original design. Looks nice. It's got 14 different games on board, apparently. Many of them are variants on the Street Fighter theme, particularly Street Fighter 2. There's about 100 different versions of that. It includes Final Fight, which I think should be much more publicised. It's one of my favourite games. And 1941, 1942, 1944, Bionic Commando, and yeah, a couple of other games as well. So $649 again. That's available at Sam's Club, apparently. I don't know if you have to be in the club or know Sam personally to pick one of those up. There's also the Pac-Man arcade cab, as mentioned, and this is a bit different because it is in the classic pub table format, complete with cup holders. $599.99. That's available from Costco. Again, this is all US only, so do bear that in mind if you are getting excited about this. Again, it is all coming out in the autumn this year, but look what we've got on this one. We've got Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Pac-Mania, Pac and Pow, Dig Dug 1 and 2. We've got Gallagher, Rolling Thunder. Now, that is a brilliant game, isn't it? I love Rolling Thunder. I used to love playing that on my Atari ST back in the day. Quite a good port of that, actually. But yeah, look at it. That's quite a cool looking thing, isn't it? Apologies to anyone who is listening in their car. You're missing out on this. And finally, this was announced back in February when the acquisition was announced, but this has also been shown at Comic-Con, apparently. These are officially licensed Sega Sonic arcade cabs. So, of course, Sonic didn't get an arcade release originally, I don't believe. I think there was some kind of coin-operated Mega Drive powered things in Japan, perhaps similar to the Nintendo offerings. But yeah, it looks very good. It looks about the way you would expect a Sonic arcade cab to look with the artwork and stuff. Evidently, some thought has gone into the design of this, and it includes Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3D Blast, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, which is a great game. I was quite addicted to that at one point back in the day, of course, based on Pyo Pyo, which is kind of a Tetris type game. You've got the beans coming down from the top and you have to match up the colours and stuff. It's a fun game. Only kind of very loosely Sonic related, but there you go. And apparently this is available at Costco as well, again with the 19-inch Supreme Edition and the 17-inch Deluxe Edition. Yeah, both units will cost $599. There you go. And also Costco exclusive. So yeah, the news being that there are lots of new arcade cabs coming from Arcade 1UP, and based on that announcement earlier this year, which I can't personally vouch for, apparently they have, they have committed to a big improvement in build quality and also the quality of the components being used in those. I guess of course, that remains to be seen, but still quite big news in the home arcade world. I'm sure you'll agree. This next story comes with a warning, I'm afraid, because I have some terrible news for you. I have just been informed that 2009 was 17 years ago. Yeah, that makes me feel very old indeed. Although, to be fair, if I didn't want to be constantly reminded of how old I actually am, perhaps I'd be better off doing something other than running a retro and vintage YouTube channel and podcast. But still I persevere, as does the endless self-flagellation. Anyway, back in 2009, I was 25 years old. And whether this actually took place in 2009 or maybe early 2010, I can't quite remember. It was a very long time ago. Have I mentioned it was a very long time ago? I was on Reddit. I was really into Reddit in a big way back in those days. And night after night, myself and thousands of others found ourselves chatting away to a game developer who was working on a very, very interesting new game. He was taking on board people's feedback and releasing new versions constantly. It felt like it was daily at one point. Started off in pre-alpha, and I remember playing that to death, and then an alpha version, signing up for an account, and I don't know if I paid for it or if I got some kind of upgrade to a paid account because I'd been involved with the alpha testing for so long. It was a long time ago. Did I mention it was a long time ago? And that account is now has now been assimilated by my Microsoft account because the company that makes this game was acquired by Microsoft. And the creator of the game was also made a billionaire as a result of that deal and ended up buying, I believe it was Jay-Z's mansion in Beverly Hills. And then, maybe the less said about him, the better. Of course, I'm talking about Notch. I'm talking about his company Mojang. And more importantly, I'm talking about Minecraft. Yeah, it's really quite heartwarming to see just how obsessed kids are with Minecraft nowadays. I have a niece and a nephew. They're, 9 and 8 years old, and they are both completely and utterly obsessed with it, playing it on their Switch. And it is a game that has endeared for so long because, when I was their age, if I was playing a game that was 17 years old, I would have been playing, Pong or something? It would have been very boring and very uncool. But it seems times have changed, and the worlds of gaming and technology have been very boring over the past couple of decades. But still, I can't really complain. Minecraft, it's a very wholesome game. It's it involves all of these different creative elements. We've got this really nice community around it, this multiplayer aspect to it. Kids building their own communities and their own worlds and things. And by and large, it's quite a non-violent, creative game. Doesn't involve a lot of really graphic violence or any kind of other adult themes. So I'm all for it. I'm just surprised that it has endeared for so long. Although perhaps not so surprising, considering just, how addictive the gameplay is. Anyway, on that note, Minecraft started off as a rather bloated and unoptimized and a bit of a mess of a Java executable. I remember that was being passed around back in the very early days, and that has actually also endeared over the years. You can still get the Java edition of Minecraft. I believe it has been somewhat tidied up by Microsoft under their ownership, but for the first time, it seems, in 17 years, if you've been playing the Java edition of Minecraft, you're going to have to upgrade your PC. That's right. Because, finally, getting to the point, in that way that I eventually do, most of the time. The story over on Tom's Hardware here this week from Joey Morales is that the Minecraft system requirements have been raised for the first time in 17 years. Microsoft now recommends 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 2020s or newer CPU to run the Java edition. So, Microsoft announced that it's increasing Minecraft's minimum and recommended system requirements for the first time in 17 years. According to the company's blog post, Minecraft Java Edition will get a spec bump to ensure that the game runs smoothly today and in the future. While it's understandable that the game's developers would want to increase the performance of the hardware that the title runs on to implement more advanced features, the new requirements are significantly higher than the previous minimum specification, and this could negatively affect players on older hardware that barely hits the minimum requirements, who would have no choice but to upgrade their PCs at a time when RAM prices are at a record high. And off the back of this, I went looking for the Minecraft clone that Action Retro features in quite a lot of his videos. It's called Classic Cube, and I should point this out to you. Of course, it's not really a clone of the the thing that Minecraft has grown into over all these years. It's kind of more based on the earlier versions with the creative mode and just kind of wandering around and building stuff. But still a lot of fun, still very addictive, and it runs on some very low specs indeed. So that is worth checking out. But just getting back to the story here, the original Java edition ran on Windows 7. You needed a Core i3, 3210, or an AMD A8. And it ran on Intel HD Graphics 4000 or a Radeon R5. And you needed 2 gigabytes of RAM. So, you know, quite good specs for 2009. The new specs, you need Windows 10 64-bit. And we've got Windows on ARM and macOS as well. A Core i3, and that is a 10th generation i3. So that's over and above the 3rd generation that we saw before. Again, we've got some ARM-related stuff. And a bump up from the Intel HD Graphics 4000. You need a minimum GeForce GTX 950 or a Radeon RX 460 or an Intel Arc A310. 8 gigabytes discrete or 12 gig if you have integrated graphics. And the recommended specs, sorry, I was just reading through the table there. I was going to say there was a mention of 16 gig. So yeah, 16 gig is the recommended with a 12th generation i5 or a Ryzen 5 5600, blimey, RTX 2060 or an RX 5600. And that is, of course, on Windows 11 64-bit. There's also the Bedrock edition, which I'm not particularly interested in because that didn't even exist back when I was playing this game. But yeah, it says here the minimum specifications are quite reasonable, with the recommended specs falling squarely within the performance of the most common hardware in June's Steam hardware survey. And I guess that's their take on it, Tom's Hardware. So there we go. If you've been playing Minecraft on your original Windows 7 3rd generation i3 machine with its Intel HD Graphics 4000 and 2 gigabytes of RAM, someone's going to comment telling me that the 3rd generation i3 didn't have HD 4000 graphics, but I don't really care. You are going to have to upgrade quite substantially to a recommended 12th generation i3 or i5, sorry. And an RTX 2060. Blimey. That's quite a bump from 2 gig to 16 gig of RAM. But I think the big story here is that Minecraft still endures after all these years. It's more popular than ever, quite deservedly so. It's a great game, great for the kids, and it's quite nice. It warms my heart to be able to talk about it again and to talk about those early days of experimenting with the game. So there you go. I'm old. So, let's take a moment to talk about another beloved game franchise of mine. I'm not talking about Doom, though, for a change, although I suppose we should at least acknowledge the Doom Shrine behind me, my collection of Doom-related stuff. I'm also not talking about Half-Life, which is a game that I talk about quite a lot here on Reese Rambles, and coincidentally, we did start playing through that again this week on the living room TV with a controller. I know, boo hiss. On that little mini PC thing that I reviewed a very, very long time ago, back when I had a YouTube channel. Do you remember that? Yeah, it was quite a while ago, that. No, this is another first-person shooter series, although I think describing it as that is kind of selling it short a bit, because it's a series that's always been known for being incredibly technically ambitious. It's set in this huge, sprawling world with this branching storyline that goes off in all sorts of different directions depending on the decisions that you make in the game. It's based around the Chernobyl nuclear disaster of 1986. It's set in the zone, the exclusion zone, around that nuclear power plant. You know what game I'm talking about yet? I think you've got it. And also it features stuff like real-time weather simulation and advanced AI. You've got mutants roaming around. You've got these interesting artifacts that do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Different factions all kind of interacting with each other, and some of them at war with each other. Government experiments going on, all sorts of secretive stuff. And it is just an insanely detailed and ambitious world, created by a Ukrainian game developer called GSC Game World, all the way back in 2007. Now, the latest installment came out in 2024, and I am, of course, talking about S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. Not a game about stalking people, although that does seem to be quite a common misconception. No, it's basically a survival horror shooter, exploration, RPG, FPS thing. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. When S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 came out, I played it continuously for about a year. I was utterly obsessed with it. I love it. I love it to pieces. And there has been some news which has been quite long awaited by S.T.A.L.K.E.R fans this week. that has caused me to get my gaming PC back out and dust it off and get it all set up again in anticipation of this latest release in a couple of weeks, because a long-awaited chapter is going to be with us, and it means that we can actually finally get inside the power plant itself, as well as another new area, which was also locked off in the original release of S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. It's a paid-for expansion. It's huge. It adds another massive chunk of story, as well as quite a substantial technical upgrade as well. So, yeah, really looking forward to this one. Now, here's the story over on techtimes.com. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Cost of Hope launches August the 20th alongside free Unreal Engine upgrade. So, if you already own S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, you will get the Unreal Engine upgrade for free, completely free. And also you can pay for this extra expansion as well, which is built upon this new engine upgrade and adds all the stuff that I mentioned. The story continues. I should credit the author here, Eloise Jones. GSC Game World confirmed this morning that S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Cost of Hope, the first major story expansion for Heart of Chernobyl, arrives on August the 20th, 2026 on PC, Xbox Series X and S and the PS5. There's a release date trailer, which I'm not going to show to you here on YouTube, but you can find it. It's just a teaser type thing. And buried in the fine print is something the 6 million plus players who already own the base game will want to know. A free update 2.0 drops the same day, upgrading Heart of Chernobyl from Unreal Engine 5.1, the version the game shipped with in November 2024, to a substantially newer UE5 build. The DLC is paid and the engine upgrade is not. So this talks about Duty and Freedom, who are two of the warring factions in the game that I mentioned. Cost of Hope picks up in parallel with the game's main campaign, triggered by a mysterious PDA signal that draws protagonist Skiff into a factional crisis. The long-running truce between two of the zone's oldest factions, Duty and Freedom, has collapsed. Duty sees the zone as a contaminated threat, requiring total containment. Freedom treats it as a frontier to be explored and exploited for humanity's benefit. A fragile diplomatic agreement known as the D4 Treaty held them apart. Now it's gone, and Skiff lands in the middle. That's exciting stuff. Two characters are central to the expansion's story. We've got Zulu, who is a returning series veteran affiliated with Duty, who will be recognisable to players of the original games, of course. And he is a weary, disillusioned stalker who questions whether his own faction's ideology is the real threat. Mavka is a new character who is a dedicated Freedom operative whose own agenda runs through the expansion's non-linear storyline alongside Skiff's. And indeed, there is a masked antagonist equipped with what the trailer describes as high-tech gear, appears as a new enemy. So, of course, we have the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which is now accessible. We could see it off in the distance in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, but now we can actually get there, and there are missions and things around that, which is great. Always loads of fun exploring that back in the original games. And, of course, there is, it's been confirmed as a full-size explorable zone with its own hub quests and sub-locations. And the second new location is the Iron Forest, which is a maze-like region filled with gravity-warping anomalies and lethal environmental hazards that force a different approach to navigation and combat than anything in the base game. There's new enemies, new mutated creatures, new anomalies, and new weapons. And GSC characterizes the expansion as containing dozens of hours of new story content with official marketing language, suggesting total playtime will run considerably longer for players who explore thoroughly. And why would you play the S.T.A.L.K.E.R games and not explore thoroughly? That's what it is all about for me. In fact, I think I enjoy exploring all those old buildings and things a lot more than fighting mutants, particularly bloodsuckers. Can't stand them. Anyway, it talks a bit here about the technical side of this, the version bump for the Unreal Engine. Of course, this was originally built on version 5.1, which was quite an early release of Unreal Engine and a cause of quite a few of those early bugs that we saw in the game when it was first released. This is rock solid, of course, a few years down the line, 5.5.4. And skips 3 full major iterative releases, according to this story. We've got Nanite, Virtualized Geometry, and Lumen Global Illumination, and 2 systems that define the visual character of UE5 games. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. And yeah, this is now part 2 of a new trilogy. So they have also announced that this is the second chapter in a second trilogy. Of course, the first 3 games were kind of related in that way. And yes, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Heart of Chernobyl was the first part of the trilogy. This is the second part, and the third part is yet to be formally announced. According to the official announcement, the Cost of Hope ending is designed as a bridge to that final DLC, with player choices carrying consequences, not just for the zone, but far beyond it. Language that suggests the third expansion will expand the stakes beyond the exclusion zone's borders. Yeah, 6 million players across the base game at March 2025. That is quite impressive number. It does include Game Pass subscribers as well. And yeah, we've got the PS5 version, which was released a while after that. Yeah, so that's what we've got. They haven't confirmed pricing for Cost of Hope. If you purchase the Deluxe Edition or the $109.99 Ultimate Edition, which I believed I did, we get it free. There you go. So if you bought the Ultimate Edition, you get this for free. That's quite cool to know. And a price of $20 has been suggested by industry analysts, but not officially announced. So there are some FAQs here on this Tech Time story as well. Please do go and check that out if you are interested in the world of S.T.A.L.K.E.R and you've been eagerly anticipating this latest release. I know I certainly have been, and as of the 20th of August, hey, if I miss any rambles in the following weeks and months, you'll know why. I'm so excited about this, can you tell? And so, much as the protagonist of that game, Skiff, and indeed his predecessor, Strelok, ventured bravely forward into the zone, we too must venture forward bravely into the unknown, into the segment that we're not calling Reese's Pieces, for reasons that we have discussed in the past. And just on a bit of a more serious note, I found myself talking to a few people last weekend at the Retro Collective event all about Reese Rambles. People were telling me how much they enjoy it and how they listen every week, or indeed watch this on YouTube. And quite a few people, kind of among that number, mentioned this segment specifically and how much they enjoy it and how much it amuses them. Because ultimately, this is a collection of stories that have kind of come up on my radar that I don't really know much about, or if I do kind of know anything at all about these subjects, don't really think that I have much to add. Or it could just be that I'm in a rush and want to get all of these out there as quickly as possible. That is also quite likely. You can't say that I'm not honest. But yeah, I was glad to hear that people enjoyed this because it is quite low effort on my part, I will say. And I do also enjoy just rattling through these stories quite quickly at 100 miles an hour. So with that said, I suppose we better get on with it. Now, the first thing I want to just acknowledge this week is that the PlayStation Network was down earlier this week for half a day, and it reignited the debate, quite rightly, I will say, around game ownership. Lots of people unable to access their games that they legally owned, unable to play online or indeed buy new games from PSN, all the things that people do on PSN, just highlighted the importance of how reliant we are on these online services with these modern consoles, particularly off the back of PlayStation's recent announcement of their next generation being digital only, and also that Sony are stopping manufacturing physical media as of 2028. Xbox, of course, also had their own announcement immediately off the back of that they would also be going fully digital with their next generation. But to be fair, I'm not sure the Xbox brand's actually going to survive that long based on some of their recent management decisions. I guess that remains to be seen. Anyway, important reminder of the importance of these things. So next up, this was actually posted over on my Discord server, and it's a PC built into a keyboard. I mean, it's not all that special, but I liked the form factor of this because, of course, many of us started with those wedge computers, stuff like the Acorn Electron in my case, the ZX Spectrum, the Amstrad CPCs, stuff like the Atari ST, the Amiga, an all-in-one thing with a keyboard on top that you plugged into your TV. And it's not really a form factor that's ever gone away, to be honest. Of course, the Raspberry Pi Foundation released their own keyboard computers quite recently, and they are massively successful, and quite rightly so. Very good machines they are. And, of course, various PC manufacturers have continued to release these things. But this one, you would be forgiven for thinking is just a keyboard if you saw it on a desk. It's very slimline. and it's very kind of svelte, and I just like the look of it. It's by HP, and it is called the Elite Board G1A. Now, there's not that much information about it here, to be honest, on gadgetguy.com.au. I don't think there's any pricing or anything on here, but some nice photos of the insides and how they've managed to package all of this up quite neatly into a neat little slimline package. So yeah, well done, HP. I quite like the look of that machine. It does look quite handy. Next up, I wanted to say a lot more about this when I saw this come up, because this is interesting. There's just not really all that much substance to it. So the NES, the NES, of course, back in the day was released with a cartridge which contained both Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. And be careful how you say that. Of course, it was released in a bundle with the Zapper, the light gun, which, of course, you could use with your CRT TV back in the day. And it turns out that there is a warehouse in Wisconsin that has been harbouring a secret to do with these cartridges. There have been sat all of these years in this warehouse 97 copies of an unreleased version of the cartridge, a version that was previously unknown to collectors, and they are all in very, very good condition indeed, all in their original packaging. So this is a chap called Jason Ganos, who was asked to help sell an old box full of NES cartridges. And this is in Waukesha, Wisconsin, in Milwaukee. And we can see some pictures of the box here and indeed the cartridges themselves. And just to describe this to our audio listeners, because I do get complaints about this, these are NES cartridges. They're in individual plastic wrappers within a box. And indeed, there are 97 copies of them, if you can visualize that. They've also had them rated by the PSA, who, of course, have graded, that's the word, them. Many of them have been graded pretty much almost perfect scores because they are in such good condition. And, of course, they have been entombed in plastic forever, as is, of course, the best way when it comes to preserving games, for some reason. I suppose there are 97 of them, so there's plenty to go around. And they are going to be going up for auction on August the 12th through Goldin Auctions if you want an opportunity to own one of these very rare copies of this game. Quite an interesting story, that. Next up, another Nintendo-related thing and also related to the NES, the NES, and this is the Famicom, the original Japanese version of that console. These Famicom box units are quite common in Japan. You do see them come up on the Japanese auction sites. They were popular in hotels and bars. It's a coin-operated version of the Nintendo Famicom console that you plug into a TV, or indeed the hotel or bar owner plugs into a TV, and then, of course, customers could put coins in a slot and play NES games for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, or whatever the time limit was set to. This is interesting because this was found in a love hotel in Japan. And if you don't know what a love hotel is, you can probably imagine. They're quite popular with young people who live at home with their parents and want an opportunity to have a few minutes alone, away from prying eyes, in that way that young people do. Sometimes, of course, in the big cities in Japan, not a lot of space, lots of people living in some quite small accommodation. I know that's the stereotype, but it is certainly true in a lot of cases. Quite why this was overly noteworthy, I don't know, but it gave me an opportunity to talk about the Famicom box and also about love hotels. And so that's why it is included here. Next up, we have some Doom stories. A shout out to the Doom Shrine behind me, my collection of Doom releases and paraphernalia, going all the way back to the original shareware copy that I had back in 1995. And I talk about these Doom ports all the time. I have a couple more for you here. This probably should have been its own segment, but there we go. This is Doom, or indeed something resembling Doom, on the Commodore 64. This is something that's been posted by IPS IRC over on the C64 subreddit this week. And it looks pretty damn good for the Commodore 64, I will say. It is recognisably Doom in places. Of course, we've got the imps here, we've got the shotgun, got a Pinky there as well running around in the background. Is this one of these ones that's pretty much been entirely done by Claude, that latest Fable model? I don't know. I didn't really read into it. There's not that much information. But there is a link to the developer's Twitter account if you want to go and follow along with the development of that project. Includes sector lighting, weapon highlighting, a scrollable map. E1 to M3 are in various stages of completion. We've got corpses, sound effects from PC speaker lumps. We've got loading levels from disk, and we've got about 15k free. That's the list of bullet points. Still, impressive to see Doom on yet another platform, and yet another quite limited platform, of course, which it was never originally intended for. Always a good technical achievement. Second up, a story on Tom's Hardware about another port of Doom. Second shout out to the Doom Shrine. And this is Doom running with regular expressions, 180 seconds per frame. Like playing correspondence chess with a shotgun. Nearly 14 million substitutions to render a frame at 80,000 substitutions per second. He definitely thought he could, but not whether he should. And if you are a developer like me and you are familiar with regular expressions, you'll know that they can be quite cryptic and quite difficult to get your head around, particularly if you when you're first learning all of this stuff. So, Doom in regular expression. I don't really have much more to say about that, to be honest. Again, that's linked down below if you want to read a bit more about that and perhaps try it for yourself if you're a sucker for punishment. Next up, a brand new port of Shinobi for the Amiga 500, and this is based on the Master System game. So it is based on the Master System's graphics, and it has an 8-way scrolling map and Joe Musashi moving around, and that's pretty much all there is to it so far. The developer mentions that they're going to be adding baddies. They think they can get 4 to 5 baddies on screen and still get it running at 50 FPS. And walk, jump, duck walk, and high jump have all been implemented already. It says more to come, perhaps. So that doesn't sound like much of a commitment to continue the development of this. But hey, Strider, over on the English Amiga board, if you're listening to this, please carry on. It looks like a very interesting project. We've got some screenshots and things here. There we go. That looks quite nice, doesn't it? I mean, it has that kind of 8-bit Master System look about it. I know there are perhaps some better looking games on the Amiga, but it's Shinobi. It's a classic for a reason. And yeah, I thought this was quite an interesting looking project. So cool stuff. And again, another game ported to a new and different system. And finally, this was going to be a story in its own right, but there isn't actually much to report on this as of yet. It is an announcement, but there's no teaser, no trailer, no really detailed information. But it is something that I am personally very excited about. So I'm going to end this segment on this just to lend it a bit more impact. And this is certainly something that I'm going to be talking about in a lot more detail in future when the details do come out. This is Thimbleweed Park 2. If you remember Thimbleweed Park, of course, it was made by some of the original people behind the original Monkey Island and some of those LucasArts games, and very much captured the spirit and the humour and the gameplay of those games. I loved it. I thought Thimbleweed Park was absolutely brilliant. I bought the proper big box copy. I actually backed it when it was first announced, and if it's the situation with this, I don't think it is actually. I think they've announced that this is going to be a proper retail release. I will certainly be buying this as well because they're really, really, really fun game. And I have high hopes for Thimbleweed Park 2. And I'm sure there'll probably be some references to Monkey Island 2 in there as well. So this is over on grumpygamer.com, and Thimbleweed Park 2, good news and bad news. First, the good news. The good news is that we just started production on Thimbleweed Park 2. Due in early 2028. So, Mark Ferrari, Gary Winnick, David Fox, Octavian Navarro, Robert Magone, and others from the original team will be back. I'll be starting up a Thimbleweed Park 2 dev blog, like we did for Thimbleweed Park, and posting regularly to keep everyone up to date. Now, the bad news? There is no bad news. It's all good news. So, Thimbleweed Park 1 is currently on sale to celebrate this if you don't already own it. It's on Steam, Switch, iOS, and Google. There will be Mac, Windows, and Linux versions of this. There will be a GOG release. There will be a Switch version. And Steve Kirk, who did the soundtrack for Thimbleweed Park, is also coming back and working on this version. So there we go. That is the official announcement. You know what? The reason I'm stalling is because I've actually forgotten the name of the owner of grumpygamer.com. Oh my goodness. Let's Google it. Let's Google it together. here's a new moment for you. Ron Gilbert. How could I forget his name? Of course, iconic adventure game developer, best known for the Monkey Island games, and of course lead developer on the Thimbleweed Park games as it stands now. So yeah, Ron Gilbert and all of those original names involved with that. I see we're up to 30 minutes for this segment, so I'm glad I didn't have to go back and re-record all of that just for the sake of forgetting someone's name. And that is that. And that, my dearest ramblers, brings me around rather neatly to our regular Videos of the Week feature, wherein I feature a video, or indeed videos, that I have seen here on the old YouTubes in the past week that have entertained, educated, enlightened, or otherwise improved my life in some small way. Or indeed, videos that have been recommended to me that I've stuck on my watch later list because I thought they looked interesting and I haven't quite gotten around to watching yet. At least I'm honest. I think that's the topic of this week's Ramble, isn't it? But actually, all that said, I do think that this week's selection is a particular highlight. I did enjoy all of these rather a lot, and I hope you enjoy all of them too. Or, if not all of them, at least a subset of them in some way. They will be linked down below in the usual place, the Videos of the Week section of my description here on YouTube, or indeed in the show notes if you're listening to this on your podcast app of choice. But with all of that out of the way, I think we should dive in and check out the actual videos. Now, the first one that I have for you is from Second Wind. Now, this is the group that was kind of born out of the ashes of Zero Punctuation, if you are familiar with that name. Yahtzee, in particular, has been creating videos on the internet since the dawn of time, or so it seems, certainly before YouTube was even a thing, on his own website. And then that was acquired, and he had a big falling out with the new owners, and this is kind of his new thing. Semi-Ramblematic, of course, he's known for Fully Ramblematic, which are his game reviews, which are always hilarious. These are his more kind of sideline, observations and things, which are also, I think, very amusing and very interesting. Now, this one is about Duke versus Quake, the hottest debate of 1996, and as you might expect, it is a very well-informed and very amusing look at that whole summer of gaming. Of course, those PC releases, Duke Nukem 3D and Quake, I've never really thought of them as being competitors, to be honest. I enjoyed playing both of them back in the day, and I think they both had very different and very interesting things to offer. I do think that Quake has actually aged better, I think only because of the fully 3D graphics. Obviously, a lot of Duke Nukem 3D was kind of sprite-based, and that does kind of age it a bit, but both fantastic games, fantastic gameplay, and both very nostalgic for me. And if you want to know his thoughts on all of that, and I'm sure you'll probably be in agreement, you can certainly go and check that out in this video. Over on Second Wind, it's 8 minutes and 54 seconds long, and I thought it was a very entertaining watch. The second video that I have for you is on a slightly different topic, and one that I keep driving home constantly every week. This is to do with Bazite, and I have a renewed interest in Bazite because, as mentioned earlier in this ramble, I've started playing Half-Life 2 again on the mini PC on the living room TV. I always do that when I say mini PC, don't I? Because I like to just point out that it does fit in my hand. But a lot of people aren't really sure what Bazite is all about and how it relates to SteamOS and all of that stuff. I try to explain it to the best of my ability. It's a Linux-based operating system aimed at gamers. It uses Valve's work on SteamOS and the Steam Deck and Proton, that compatibility layer. It runs Windows games better than Windows. Who better to explain it than Christopher Barnett from the channel Explaining Computers? And as always, he does a fantastic job. He has this 70s school teacher, open university video kind of vibe to him, and that is not, any disrespect whatsoever. He is very authoritative and very, very clever, and comes across very well in his videos. I watch his videos, even though they are perhaps more often than not aimed at perhaps a lower experience level than myself, but he very thoroughly researches everything and explains everything very well. So I find his channel very educational and very informative. And if you want to know what Bazite's all about, this thing that I keep banging on about that I run on all of my gaming PCs, you could do far worse than to watch this video of his. 21 minutes and 58 seconds, and it's just a good watch, to be honest, as always with his videos. So That's Explaining Computers, Bazite, Linux for Gaming, and far more. And as perhaps hinted at by the title, he does also go into some other quite good uses for Bazite, because it is actually a decent desktop Linux OS in its own right, above and beyond all of the Steam stuff. So that's that. The third video that I have for you is this really interesting interview, actually, with Bill Hurd, who was one of the creators of the Commodore 64 and, a big name at Commodore in his own right in the 1980s. This is Sayaka's Digital Attic, and, she's become quite a big creator in the retro vintage computing space, doing her own hardware stuff, her own repairs and things like that, and some quite interesting documentaries on various topics of kind of vintage computing. So this is her interview with Bill Hurd. It's 36 minutes and 58 seconds long, and I know a lot of these interviews can drag on quite a lot and be quite long-winded, and but this isn't that. This is actually quite condensed and quite information packed. It's a very, very good chat, a very good interview, and it was very informative. I don't know much about 1980s Commodore. I don't know much about the Commodore 64, to be honest. I had heard the name Bill Hurd, and I did know that he was very important. So, it's helped to fill some gaps in my knowledge, and it probably will for you too. So there you go. That's Inside Commodore's Secret Labs Bill Hurd interview over on Sayaka's Digital Attic, and it is 36 minutes and 58 seconds long, as mentioned. My fourth and final video of the week for you is this all about a miniature mechanical TV. So if you know much about the history of TV, you'll know that they started off as a mechanical thing, oddly enough. Drawing the picture line by line. And actually that kind of, survived through to the CRT era as well, as kind of the underpinnings of that technology, as these things often do. And this is a channel called Ancient, who has created his own mechanical TV from scratch using a Raspberry Pi Pico and various other bits and pieces of hardware. The finished product is very well polished. It is a rather nice looking thing and actually works quite well as well. Really nice little hardware project, and also a nice compact little video as well. 8 minutes and 40 seconds. Quite often these hardware projects, I'm not talking about Ancient specifically. I am guilty of this myself, but quite often these hardware projects do drag on a bit, and sometimes you just want a nice quick watch for your lunch break, someone building something interesting. And this certainly satisfies that need. So Ancient's Scan Wheel, a miniature mechanical TV, and it's a fun little project as well. Let's just read some information from the description as well. It's a mechanical TV built inside a Nipkow drum. It has a resolution of 4096 by 20, so could be accurately described as 4K or 20p, depending on your outlook. And also there is a GitHub with all of the resources that you need to be able to build one of these for yourself if you want to tackle this as well. So my hat is off to you, Ancient. This is a very cool project, and also a channel that I hadn't come across before. So very good stuff. So just to give you a bit of a roundup of all of those, we've got Duke versus Quake from Second Wind, Semi-Rambler-matic. We have the Bazite video from Explaining Computers, Christopher Barnett, always a very educational and informative channel. We have the interview with Bill Hurd from Sayaka's Digital Attic, always a very interesting channel, and certainly taught me some stuff about 1980s Commodore. And also this miniature mechanical TV called the Scan Wheel from this channel called Ancient, and I'll certainly be watching some more videos from that channel. In fact, let's subscribe to that. To be honest, when I subscribe on this thing, it is purely performative. I watch videos on my main YouTube account on my TV. I don't even use this account to watch videos. I use it to upload videos. So there you go. And that is that. That's my videos of the week for you. As mentioned, you will find all of those linked down below if there's anything that has piqued your interest. And indeed, that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. But there is one more thing, something that arrived in my inbox earlier this week from my good friend Alan Turvey, who sends me all kinds of interesting projects and things. So thank you, Alan, if you are indeed watching or listening. And this is going to be quite nostalgic for quite a lot of you out there. So this is a press release which covers The return of Gremlin Graphics. Gremlin Graphics Classics is the header on here. Rewind, play, fast forward, the Gremlin is back. Gremlin Graphics Classics, that's quite a tongue twister, isn't it? Is a new heritage label working directly with Gremlin founder Ian Stewart, with a particular focus on the company's pioneering 8-bit years and the people who helped shape them. The initiative brings together developers, new and old, archivists, specialist partners and enthusiasts to restore and recover Gremlin's history, support new creative projects and ensure its iconic games and characters continue to inspire future generations. So, this is a preservation project. They are looking to recover or recreate all of the original artwork, music and source code associated with every original 8-bit Gremlin game. They're building a centralized resource where people are going to be able to access all of that content. And they are working very closely with the Gremlin Archive, which is an excellent website, and Games That Weren't, which is also an excellent project. I've had quite a lot to do with them over the years. And they're supplementing their excellent research and dedication to recovering development materials, lost artwork, documentation, and unreleased projects from this foundational period in gaming history. Also looking to build strategic partnerships with other organisations like the Spectrum Next, the Mega 65, Crash and Zap, and their sister label Midnight Brew, which is where the Alan Turvey connection comes in. And there will be new releases featuring classic Gremlin IP on original hardware, commercial and non-commercial proposals, all sorts of stuff mentioned in this wonderful press release. And their first release is going to be the Gremlin Graphics Classics Volume 1, the ZX Spectrum, which is the first in a series of retrospective art books. Published via Fusion Retro Books and covers the early years of Gremlin on the ZX Spectrum. So these wonderful art books, I do own a few myself, covering various platforms. And it will be officially launched at Crash Live in October. And we'll celebrate Gremlin's formative years, and in particular the contribution of founder Ian Stewart. And there are going to be some Gremlin names there, some alumni, people including Peter Harrop, Tony Crowther, and Sean Hollingworth, with further guests to be announced. So, Volume 2, the Commodore 64, is planned for next year, but this is going to be a much, much bigger project. Preserving and celebrating and making available the wonderful back catalogue and the IP of Gremlin Graphics, of course. Now, not that you should need any reminder, but if you know the name but perhaps don't remember some of the specific titles involved, there is a comprehensive list over on Wikipedia. Of course, they later rebranded as Gremlin Interactive. But where do you even start with this list? We've got the Monty Mole series, we've got Premier Manager, Nigel Mansell's World Championship Racing, we've got Jungle Strike, Zool, we've got Top Gear, Actua Sports series, we've got Gary Lineker's Supers. Why did I pick that one out? I don't even know where to start. Like I say, Hate, I remember that game, HATE, Hostile All-Terrain Encounter. Oh, there's a blast from the past, though. Enjoyed that game quite a lot back in the day. The Lotus series, Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge, of course, Supercars. We've got Hero Quest. We've got all sorts of stuff. Virtual Tennis. Hey, I'll link to the list so you can check it out for yourself. And then, of course, apparently they were acquired by Infogrames at one point in 1999. Very interesting history behind this company. I guess they are focusing on the original Gremlin Graphics era, which, of course, dates back as far as 1984. That's as old as me. There you go. I'm not quite sure what the situation is with their later games, but there's certainly a lot of original 8-bit material, which is what they seem to be focusing on, and I think quite rightly so. So thank you ever so much to Alan for sending that over to me, and it looks like it's going to be a very, very interesting initiative indeed. Gremlin Graphics Classics. Looking forward to seeing some re-releases of some classic games and also some interesting historical material around those games, of course. That's all I have for you for this week's Ramble, though, so thank you ever so much for joining me, as always. And as always, these go out on a Friday evening, UK time, 2 minutes to midnight, on my second YouTube channel, youtube.com/Reese Rambles, and also on the podcast platforms, starting with Spotify, and then somehow, via the magic of the tubes of the internet, being pushed out to all the other platforms from there. But as mentioned, that's all I have for you. So a big thank you to all of my Discord community who have been chatting about these stories all week. I don't think I could do this without you. If you want to join them, you certainly can using the link down in the description. Links to all of the stories featured are down in the description as always. But that's that. I'm going to go and play with my Amstrad now and maybe start making a main channel video. That would be unusual, wouldn't it? Well, that's all I got for you, so bye.